Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. These people that listen to us probably don't feel like it's been a long time, but to us it feels like a long time. The only small bit of housekeeping that I want to make sure that we cover is if you've listened the last 2 weeks, you were listening to replays. We said that at the beginning, but there could have been some skipping through and some overlooking of things. So there's been a lot of you that have asked about, do we get to hear part 2 of Inside the Mind of the Adulterer? And the answer is you can go listen to it anytime you want to. You can listen to part 1, part 2, part 3, and you can listen to part 1 and 2 of Inside the Mind of the Betrayed. So to find those, if you listen on a podcast platform like Spotify or Apple, you can just go back to May of 2023. So a year ago May, not this past May, a year ago May. And all 5 of those are in a row. I think it starts like May 8th, but you'll see it. Inside the Mind of the Adulterer is the first one. Or you can go to our website, theredeemedmarriage.com, and you can either scroll all the way because they're in order, or you can type it in. Type in Inside the Mind or just a keyword, and it'll start popping up, and you can listen to it straight from there.
Yeah, I loved all the comments about it this week, about how good it has been to listen to that. And it also tells me how many new listeners we've gotten since May of 2023. So that's good. And you can always go back and look for topics that relate specifically to what you're going through right now.
Yeah. In fact, on our website, if you go to the podcast page of our website, just click on go to the podcast, or podcast is up at the top. Just go there, and there is a search bar that is amazing. Like, I use it all the time because people will ask us questions about specific things, and if I want to send them and it's so good that if you just type in, let's just say you type in trust, and it's gonna
or forgiveness or
it's gonna bring up not just the ones that say trust in the title, but in the description. If the word trust is in the description, it brings it up. So it's super cool. Our webmaster is
the webmaster.
He's the best. So anyway, that's that bit of housekeeping. We were gone for 2 weeks or almost 2 weeks, because we did our double date that lots of you have followed. Maybe we'll share some more about that at some point, but that's not really the platform of the podcast. So if you want to see all about it, go follow us on Instagram. We put some stuff on Instagram and Facebook, but mostly on Instagram. You can go and you can look and see pictures from that, and it was just a really incredible trip. So it was awesome. We enjoyed that a lot. And so now we're back in the swing of things. And so
we did the double date, and we also went to see Luke.
We did. We
went and
saw our oldest son. We also caught up with some new marriage ministry friends that we made a few weeks ago at the Marriage Collective. And so shout out to Megan and Casey from Marriage 365. If you don't know them, go follow them. They're incredible people, and we're looking forward to doing some stuff with them in the future. But let's jump in. Let's talk marriage. Let's talk about some stuff that might help you guys. So one of the things that we've been really spending a lot of time just trying to figure out is Instagram. I laugh because I'm not really good at Instagram.
Same.
Well, you are good. We have the great thing is that we have strengths and weaknesses, and we complement each other. But we haven't figured out how to really make that happen on the whole Instagram thing yet. So we're still working.
Yeah, and we took a class. We took a class online to figure out how to really focus on our platform and our, as they call it in the Instagram world, our niche. And I don't know if that's an Instagram word.
No, it's just it's a podcast word.
Okay.
Big time. But
and so because of that, because we took that class, it's really made us zone in or hone in?
Both.
On what our Like, what are we trying to do with this ministry?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been super interesting to see your thoughts and my thoughts and how they have aligned. And I think I know it's because we pray so fervently for this ministry that I really feel like God has just aligned our heart. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because you said fervent. You're throwing out some big old words, today. You're just feeling it. You're feeling smart and intelligent.
It's because I've had 2 weeks off from school. And so I'm like feeling all
been
refreshed.
Around elementary age kids. You've been around some adults.
That's right.
Well, the thing that I think for me, it has taught us, or it has encouraged us or challenged us to really go and look at what other people are doing in the marriage ministry space, but then to see what they're doing, but then how to make ours specific to us and what our story and our message and all that. And so anyway, the reason why we're beginning this episode like this is because we yesterday spent a lot of time just really concentrating on, the keywords and the things that people are going through in marriage. And one of the things that happened yesterday was we started just like spitting out specific words that marriages go through, and specifically words that marriages that have gone through betrayal have gone through. And as we were making that list of words, the first one that kind of came to us was the word alone.
Yeah.
So here we are. We've been talking for 7 minutes, and this is the word. The word is alone. And we just want to talk for a few minutes today about that feeling of alone. And I think when we put the word down, when we were writing all these kind of keywords and how we all sort of relate when we've been through similar things, I think when we put it down, we were thinking about betrayal and how when you go through something like a betrayal, whether it's infidelity, pornography, just some sort of mistrust, all of that, it creates this feeling of being alone. But as we really started thinking about it, the word alone is so much bigger than just, we feel alone because we feel like nobody else is going through this, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And as I started doing a little more thinking about it today, I really thought about how there's people out there that haven't gone through anything traumatic in their relationship. They are just in a marriage and they feel alone.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be about betrayal or what's going on during that. It's just that a lot of people feel alone in their marriage.
And I think the biggest reason for that is because of all of the masks that people put on to pretend that everything's okay. And also, we're sitting here joking about growing our social media, but I think social media helps make people feel that way because they see everybody's highlights and think everybody else is okay. Mm-hmm. And when you even have a little bitty issue in your marriage, it can make you feel very alone because you feel like you're the only one in the world that feels that way. And you feel like you can't talk about it to anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that you can feel alone in your marriage, because you're not connected and you just feel alone, like you're apart from your spouse.
Right.
But then when you go through a betrayal, you can also feel alone as an individual.
Isolated.
Yeah, but I think you can also feel very alone as a couple going through it. So
because we did.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we kind of want to talk about today is from our perspective of being alone as individuals and as a couple when we were going through our betrayal. So very quick reminder, if anybody is tuning in for the first time, we walked through infidelity 13 years ago. Heather confessed to being unfaithful. And that started us on a journey towards healing and restoration and redemption. It was very, very public, which I think is very important to know that it was very, very public. So everybody knew about it, but that didn't change how alone we felt, which we'll talk about. So we were in it together almost from the very beginning. I would say within the first 2 weeks, we knew we were in this thing together. But even in that, we still felt alone individually and as a couple. So as I was thinking through this, I wanted to kind of ask you, but as a couple, where did you feel that the most?
Like isolated from you?
Either one. Just how did you feel? I mean, when you think of the word alone, how did you feel alone as we were journeying through that?
Well, there were two very big ways that I felt alone. The first way is I felt alone because I didn't feel like any other couple had walked through that, especially in our circle of people that I would have considered people who would support us. No one had walked through that. I felt very alone in that same way because we had people walk away from us, and that made it feel lonely because it was like not only does nobody understand what we're going through, but there are people who are like, we're not walking through this with you. And so that was super, super alone feeling.
And I think, and it's probably fair to say this too, don't forget what you were going to say. I just didn't want to forget what I was going to say. So I'm going to make you forget what you were going to say. I think it's important, though, to also point out that some of that, it wasn't that some people were being ugly. They didn't know how to respond.
Right.
And had no idea how to relate to us.
That's right.
And what we were going through. And so they didn't mean to, but they were completely isolating us because they didn't know how to respond.
Sure.
And I would say family, even to not immediate family, but some family even to a degree, just was like
we don't really know how to deal with this.
We
don't know how to talk to y'all about this.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as you, I felt very long. I mean, like you said, we knew from almost the very beginning that we were going to fight for our marriage, but I felt alone because I didn't feel comfortable sharing with you how I was hurting because I had hurt you so badly. So I didn't feel like I could share with you my hurts. And so therefore I felt very alone.
Yeah. So let's go there for just a second. We were, just like you said, and I said at the beginning, we were very much together. Mm-hmm. We were physically together, living together. We were
not physically in intimacy.
Right.
But we were in the same place.
We were in the same place, right. So we were not separated.
Right.
We were physically living in the same place. We were both committed to fighting for our relationship. So I feel like in that way we were together, but just like you said, I feel like we were also very alone in a lot of ways. So like for me, I felt alone because even though we were together, I felt a sort of an abandonment, like you had abandoned me. Mm-hmm. You know, basically turned your back on me and our marriage, and you went a different direction. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, that was very lonely and scary too.
And a lot in that same idea is I chose someone else over you.
Right.
And so I can't imagine the feelings that you had of like, I'm not even who she would choose.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So I had no self-confidence.
Right.
Felt very, my self-worth was really, really poor.
Identity.
Yes. And
all
so
just shot.
And then of course there was also just the embarrassment.
Sure.
So like I was embarrassed because of what you did. I was embarrassed for you, but I was also embarrassed in that people were probably looking at me going, well, what did you do to cause that?
Or why weren't you enough?
Why weren't you good enough? Were you a bad husband? So just a lot, and that causes withdrawal. You know, you just don't want to be in front of people. You don't want to, You don't want to confide in people. Certainly don't want to trust
You
anybody.
don't go into public places because people are looking.
Right.
Which ours was very public. And so we had that experience. But we also talked to so many people that don't, it's not public, but they still feel just as alone, if not more, because they can't tell people what's going on.
That's a weird dynamic,
is.
because even though everybody knew, for us, we felt very alone.
Yeah, and
which
isolated.
is weird.
Yep. And
but then, just like you said,
absolutely,
these people that nobody knows, and that really is, it's like, I'm the only one.
Yep.
Like, nobody even knows about this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's okay. I just thought about this for the first time, that is exactly how the enemy wants us to feel. No matter what, he makes us feel like like we're alone, like our thoughts of what the world would think. And I say the enemy because I know he is thrilled that we feel alone, but the world would make us feel alone in both of those situations. And that's exactly how the enemy would want us to feel. Like, when you look at scripture, or you look at the word, or you look at how believers are supposed to treat other people, and how believers are supposed to walk with people who have been through betrayal, the absolute worst thing is to isolate them and make them feel alone. Yeah. And so I can imagine that as we walked through it publicly, and other people walked through it publicly, or not publicly, where it's just the two of them that know, or three of them, or whatever. I think that God wants to shine a light on that and say, hey, let's walk through this correctly and in the light, and not walk through it in darkness, because darkness makes you feel alone. I mean, you think about darkness at night, like physical darkness. Yeah. It's scary. It is, being alone is the word that I would use to describe the darkness. And so when you're living in that darkness, that's also a physical feeling of being alone as well.
Those were all, like I was saying, those were all things that I felt alone, even though we were together. And I love what you said, in that you didn't feel like you could talk to me about any of the things that you were dealing with, which I now, looking back on it, completely see the guilt and the shame and embarrassment and just fear of losing your family, fear of, what your consequences had caused, all of that. But it was hard for you to talk to me about it, because it was like, it's my fault.
That's right.
Why would I?
Because I could make myself think that's going to be his response. I mean, I would say, you cannot go to him and say, oh my gosh, I'm hurting so bad, I'm so embarrassed. Because what I thought, you would go, well, you did it, you moron. Like, why? I mean, these are consequences because of what you did. Yeah. And sorry for you, but you caused them.
Yeah. And there was certainly a time in there.
Sure.
When I I wanted you to feel that pain.
I feel like that pain is necessary. I do. Because it pushes you. Like, I had to reach for something bigger than myself. And if I didn't see that, if I didn't have that pain, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, because the pain made me stay in it. Like, there was nothing, like, I couldn't just sweep it under the rug. And I think so many people, when they start feeling that, it's like, oh, well, I don't like this, so let me just sweep it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. But that pain was necessary. Yeah. The aloneness was necessary. And I think that God used that in my life to push me and towards something else, and to realize, like, it was really kind of the first time that I saw who I was without Jesus. And I didn't like it. And so that was very alone. But it was lonely feeling, but it also is exactly what pushed me to him, to be like, I can't do this alone. Like, I can't do this alone.
Well, and we'll talk in just a minute before we get to the end of just some things that we did that, because obviously it's so unhealthy if you are not in a place or I'm not in a place to be the person that you talk to. You you cannot keep that stuff inside. Like somebody has to help you journey through that. And so we'll talk about that and some of the things that we did when we just kind of give some real specific things that you guys can do to move past feeling alone. But the other thing I wanted us to touch on is not only were we just feeling alone as individuals, but like as a couple, we couldn't find any resources.
Nope.
And so that's really why we have started doing what we're doing, because we remember 13 years ago, and me probably a lot more than you, because we've said this before, but when you came to me and confessed, then all of a sudden it was a marriage problem for me. For you, it was a heart problem. And so you began to work on your heart, whereas it wasn't my heart. Now, there were things that I needed to change and I needed to do different and I needed to grow through it, but it wasn't my heart that needed to change. So the only thing I knew to try to fix was our marriage.
Right.
And so I went after all of the marriage resources. And by all, I mean both of them, because there's no,
resources.
There were none hardly, but that's not fair because there were people doing some great things which we were able to latch onto. But it's amazing to me how in this day and age of the internet and just everything being at your fingertips, it's still so incredibly hard to find people that are out there telling a story like we're telling. And and look, I know they're out there, but it's still hard to find them. And we know lots of marriage ministries right now, but I can think of probably less than 5 or 5-ish that I would tell somebody, hey, go check these people out. And it's not because nobody else is good. It's just I don't know of any others.
Do any of them have infidelity?
Yeah, that's
story?
what I mean.
Oh, okay.
People that have specific infidelity.
I gotcha.
But I mean, like for an example,
or betrayal.
Yeah, but for an example, today I was trying to do some research because, hey, sneak peek here, we're going to start offering marriage intensives. But I was doing some research on marriage intensives, and I mean, I still am only finding, 8 to 10 of those. There are millions of people in this country, in this world, and millions of people that are going through. I mean, how are 10 ministries gonna service and help those people? So it's a little bit mind-blowing that there's less people, and then when you try to find resources at churches, churches are just scared to talk about it for the most part. And even trying to find sermons on marriage, it's so few and far between. And so I think that was a big part of how alone we felt, was who can help us through this?
That's right.
And so we just felt very alone. We also felt very alone because in our world, everybody had it together, we thought.
Yeah.
And we just looked at because everybody in our community, I say everybody, now we know better and it's getting better, but people would put on a mask and they just made you think that they were fine. And so we didn't want to go talk to those people because nobody could understand what we were going through. And so I think that was a big part of it, just knowing the fear of judgment, the fear of the embarrassment of having to talk with somebody. It was just we felt really, really alone.
Yep. And so if you are listening to this and you're like, yep, that's me. Like maybe you haven't even been through betrayal, infidelity, where you've lost trust at all. There's still some things in your marriage that you're like, I don't have anybody to talk to about this because I don't want people, because I can remember, pre-affair. And if you've been listening to Inside the Mind of the Adulterer, then you've listened to part of that pre-affair thing where there were things that were red flags looking back that if I had talked to somebody about those things, then maybe I wouldn't have gone down the path that I did. But because I was embarrassed and felt like I was the only person in the world that had those feelings, then that loneliness kicked in and I wasn't going to talk to anybody about it. Mm-hmm. And so even if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, that's me, like I have some red flags or I have some things that just are not right in our marriage that I wish that I had somebody to talk to about, that's where we need to go. Because it's not, I don't think it's helpful for us to sit here and say, we were alone and you're alone. Okay. Like, we're alone. Like, you feel alone. We were lonely. Mm-hmm. So what do we do about it?
Yep. So let's do that. Let's talk about what do you do when you feel alone. And so we want to share some things that we did and also give some just encouragement and some suggestions on things that you can do where you are if you feel alone. And one of those is just like what you said, finding somebody to actually talk to. And whether that's going to counseling, to find a good biblical counselor that you can go and speak to. There's just something about being able to share with somebody and being able to be open and honest. And we did that. Counseling was a part of our story. We had a great counselor that journeyed with us through that. But I think, to be honest, even more than that was the mentors that we had, and especially for you. So you may want to speak into that a little bit.
Guys, I wouldn't have made it without my mentor. And Penny Dees was mine. I joke, and please hear, this is a joke, but I say, on the throne, Jesus is at God's right hand, and Penny Dees is on the left, because I just feel that she was such an instrumental part of my healing and my connecting to the Lord. It's 13 years later. She has since moved. She's been gone for about a year, moved to Oklahoma. And so we don't get to visit. I mean, we were literally, until she moved, we were meeting once a week. Like, it's not something that was just for a little season. It was continuous. And since she's moved, we've had to do Zoom calls and things like that. But what I'm saying is, it was such an instrumental part. For my heart, it was the number one thing. Counseling was great, but that one-on-one mentoring, the daily what is going on in your life and daily check-ins and weekly, are you good? What are you struggling with? What are you memorizing? What are you studying? Just the accountability was unbelievable. And if you're thinking, how do I find one of these mentors?
Yeah, that's a hard thing.
Yeah. You need to start praying that God will bring somebody into your life. Your church is your number one resource. Going and talking to somebody maybe on staff that can point you to a male, or if you are female, you need to search out a female. If you're a male, you need to search out a male. So I'm just going to talk to the ladies. If you're a lady, you go to your pastor and you say, hey, I'm looking for somebody to walk alongside with me that's older, that has been through a lot of life, that can maybe... who would you consider a godly woman that could journey with me? Now, if you are like, yeah, there's no way I'm telling somebody about infidelity, or what if I am considering having an affair? Like, I can't talk to anybody about that. We offer one-on-one coaching. If you're like, I just really need to talk to somebody who understands. I'm walking with a couple of girls right now that their husbands refuse to meet. But I'm able to speak into them where we couldn't do marriage coaching because it's just one person. But and I'm not saying I have to be that person, but it needs to be someone. Rusty meets with men as well, but what is ideal is if you can sit face to face with somebody with a cup of coffee and do life together. that's ideal. If you are like, no, I'm too embarrassed, or no, there's no one like that for me, of course, we do have that resource and would love to journey alongside you.
Yeah, and our preference is the marriage coaching where we're together and the couples with us, and we, but the unfortunate thing is that we can't coach everybody because we don't have enough. We don't have enough time in our schedule. I mean, I looked at our schedule, just trying to make sure that as we're coming back from this vacation, that everything was lined up, and I think we literally have 3 spots, 3 coaching sessions available through the end of October. But November is pretty open because I looked at that, and there's quite a few dates, and so it's not like, oh, well, if we reach out to them, we won't be able to talk to them for another 6 months. I mean, we do this a lot, and we do it to where we can be as accommodating as we can to people. And then just like what you said, we also do some one-on-one stuff for when we have to, and we really, really would love for you to pursue that. If you're in one of those positions where it's like, I don't have anybody, I don't know anybody, I don't go to a church that can facilitate something like that, because we know that there's some of you out there like that. And I would also say, if your church is not a church that is supportive or can help walk through, there's other churches. And I'm not being ugly, but the good churches also don't care when you leave one church to go to another church because you need what they're offering.
That's right, because that's not what it's about. It's about reaching lost people.
Yes. So if you need some help with that, like, we would love to try to talk you through it and give you some options, and especially the options of being a part of our marriage coaching. But then also marriage intensives, there's, if counseling is not the thing, if you need like a 2-day where you just really dive in. And
that's why it's called an intensive.
Yes, it's very intense. And so those are some options, and that's actually something that we're going to be offering really, really soon. And then just being I think even beyond finding other people to communicate with, you have to start communicating and being vulnerable and being open with your spouse. I mean, we say that from the very, very beginning, but what ends up happening is if you become a team and you become vulnerable and where you can share anything and be open with your spouse, then you start creating this new emotional intimacy, which I will tell you, it also leads to physical intimacy. And as you begin to have that with your spouse, it is amazing the transformation and how there is the potential to just honestly not feel alone anymore because of your relationship with your spouse. And I think a great example of this is we just spent 10 days together. And those 10 days together, we were 24/7, like literally 24/7 for 10 days. And I remember I said to you at the end of those 10 days, I said, we've been together 10 days, 24/7, and I haven't gotten tired of you yet. But there is something about becoming a safe place, which that's a word we're gonna use soon as safety, or unsafe. But becoming a safe place for your spouse, building that trust and that relationship and that deep emotional and physical intimacy to where you won't feel alone because your spouse is your person. You said that today when you called me. You were like, I'm calling to tell you this because you're my person.
Because my fingernail broke off and it hurt.
So if we just had to give you this checklist of things to do, it would be, don't walk through this alone. Like, find somebody that you can journey with. It's also recognizing, you may think, oh, well, nobody at my church or nobody in my community can understand this. It's just because they're living in a secret just like you are. There are people everywhere that can relate to you. And there's also people that would love to journey with you. So if you can't find that in your community, branch out, come find us, or we can help to find somebody maybe that's close to you, or even another ministry, because we've started finding a lot more network and resources that we can help people, even with specific problems.
Yep.
So, All right. You got anything you need to?
I don't. This is what happens when we haven't recorded for 2 weeks. We talk too long.
35 minutes is a great amount of time. People are just fine with it.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. And we just want to give you hope in that. And that is a big, massive key word for us is hope, because we've experienced it and we want the same thing for you and your marriage. So, yep, thanks for listening this week, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.
Peace.